Hi, hello, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Paytm Money Talks, today's episode. And we've got a very interesting topic today, a $10 trillion opportunity, manufacturing sector. So I'm Neeraj Gogoi, your host for the talk, and I welcome all of you. So before we start, let me give you a quick intro about the manufacturing sector. India stands out as one of such country with a great potential powerhouse for the manufacturing sector, and that is yet to realize its promise. Now, if you look back from 2006 to 2012, India's manufacturing sector grew by around 9.5% per year. Then, over the next 6 years, the growth declined to 7.4%. And in fiscal 2020, our manufacturing sector generated 17.4% of India's GDP, a little more than 15.3%, which was again highest in 2000. But again, by comparison, it is much lesser than countries like Vietnam and all. Now, in the past 13 years, India's manufacturing sector share of employment increases by just 1% compared to a 5-point increase in the service sector. Now, if we look at McKinsey Global Institute report, they've got a small, beautiful article published, India's Turning Point, an economic agenda to spark growth and job. So, developing globally competitive manufacturing hubs represents one of the biggest opportunity for India to spur economic growth and job creation for the next decade. So, yes, we are going to talk about how the manufacturing sector is going to contribute India's journey to become a $10 trillion economy. And again, I'd like to tell you that this talk is powered by Paytm Money. Great, welcome back. The guest today is Mr. Raghav Iyengar. He's a Chief Business Officer at Axis AMC. Now, Raghav has got more than 25 years of experience in the mutual fund industry. Before Axis, he was with India Bulls Mutual Fund as a CEO. And before joining India Bulls Mutual Fund, he was with ICICI Mutual Fund as a head of retail and institutional business. So it's a great pleasure to have Raghav today with us. So welcome, Raghav. Welcome onto the floor.
Thank you so much, Neeraj. Thank you, Paytm Money, for having me. And thank
Absolutely.
you.
As always, it's a great pleasure to
And
have
many
you
thanks
today.
all the viewers for spending time on a Monday evening. Yes.
Absolutely. And we are going to make it a very interactive. In fact, I would like to tell all of viewers beforehand, please feel free, go ahead, type your question in the chat box. And we want to have a very engaging kind of a discussion today. So, Raghav, to start the first thing first, how do the market look like? It's all at an all-time high. We are very, very optimistic. Our GDP numbers have been fantastic. And people are very, very bullish about our economy, about our country, about our market and everything. So what is your feel? How do you feel? Do you feel the
I think
same?
I think we did this. So manufacturing is a great opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to talk about it. But I know this is a general question. So
Right.
thanks to Access India manufacturing launch, I had a chance, Neeraj, to go to about 12 cities in the last 6 weeks. And it's not a Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai
Mhm.
phenomenon. This feel good is sort of extending. In fact, I feel it stronger when I go out of the top eight metros. I think what has happened in the last especially last couple of quarters, is that I think you had a lot of uncertainty around a lot of things, and all those things, the Ukraine war,
Right.
the Israel, Lebanon war. There is no shortage of bad news. You just have to open a newspaper and you'll see 25 bad news, right? I think, and somewhere I think over the last month and a half, and I think this is largely thanks to post Dasera, specifically in the Dasera festive period. I think people have started feeling better. That is getting reflected in consumption. That is getting reflected in the way that people are behaving, traveling, spending money. Obviously, then after that, you had the state government results, and you had various other policies that have happened across, and suddenly fantastic data prints have started to come. The interesting thing is all this cannot happen in 6 weeks. Obviously, a lot of this has been happening over the last year and a half, 2 years. But I think it's finally getting recognized now. So I think today that feel good factor is absolutely live. I think when you look at corporate results, especially June, September results are pretty okay. I think October, December results, at least from what are what we call temperature checks across various industries, are looking fine. There is
Mhm.
some stress, obviously, in some parts of the market, especially IT and some parts of those businesses. It's a little subdued, but large parts of the economy are absolutely firing. So I think it's a good times that have come here. It's just
Mhm.
sort of getting compounded. There is some uncertainty in 2024, but I think broadly the mood seems to be one of positivity.
Absolutely. So again, we are almost close to 5 trillion economy already, right? There are so many research published on it, and one report like IHS Market, they say that
Yeah,
by 2030, India is going to overtake Japan and Germany, and
yeah.
India is going to be next to US and China. Feel good
Yeah.
about thinking
Yeah.
about that, talking about that, right? As an Indian, uh, again, it's not a question of when, if it's a question of when, right? So, what do you think? What's your take on this? How many years, and uh, what do you think about that?
I think the same thing that we talk about in our personal life, Neeraj, which is compounding, that really
Right.
happens at an economy level. So it took us almost 60 years to get to the first trillion. And
Correct.
somewhere in the last 12 years, we've gone from whatever 1 trillion to maybe 3.6, 3.7. There was a recent article, but of course, that article is not really right because it said we have hit 4 trillion. But my guess is we are much closer to it than we were ever in the past. Now, if
Hmm.
you see economies ahead of us, it's essentially Germany and Japan. Both are
Hmm.
in the early 4 trillion. Somebody's around 4.1, somebody's about 4.3. Now we have one very very big hidden weapon, which in our times when we were in school, we were taught that population is a big problem.
Yes.
That's not the case. Actually, population is
Hmm.
possibly the reason why, on a structural basis, we will overtake both Japan and Germany very quickly because they have declining populations, declining consumption. In some sense, they are more export oriented. A lot of those problems we don't have. Plus, we are starting off from a base which is easily leapfroggable, right? So I won't be surprised before 2030 is what the estimate of IHS talks about. But I won't be surprised, Neeraj, that we'll be discussing a $5 trillion show very soon, maybe in the
Hmm.
next couple of years itself, because the 2 to 3 happened very, very rapidly.
Correct.
And the 3 to 4 is also happening very rapidly. My sense is that will happen by end of this next calendar year. That will already be 4. Then if you're already at 4 trillion at say 2024, I don't think you have to wait till 2030 to hit 5. My sense is that will come much, much faster. So I think 3, 4 large things. I think one is obviously the
Hmm.
structural thing. I think almost 65% of our population is in the working age. A
Correct.
corresponding
Hmm.
number in other developed economies or larger economies except the US is its reverse. There's a study that we looked at, by 2031, 1 out of 5 people working in the world will be an Indian. Because it's nothing to do with that we are great God or anything. It's just that we have the right demographics. And the world has the wrong demographics. So if people need to work, I think there's a chance that 22% of the working population will be not in India, but maybe from India. I'm sure you're hearing about the fact that today a lot of people are being going out to Middle East used to be the preferred location for people to go and work. Now, fun thing is that they are going all over the place. My son studies in Stockholm today, and
Hmm.
the number of Indians working in Sweden is not funny, and they are not coming as blue collared workers. They are coming as white collared workers working for large companies because there is a genuine problem of talent over there, and we have got good talent. I think Indians adjust very well to their host countries. We largely follow the law, so we are welcomed in that sense. Today, the immigration issues which are there with some other parts is not there applying to India today. So I think it's an interesting phase because you have a super working population. You have a great services economy. You have a great thrust on manufacturing, which is going to take our GDP to a different level, and you have the next two economies which are not too far away from us. It's
Correct.
not like we are 3.7 or 3.8 and they are 5 7 trillion dollars. They are 4.1 and 4.3. So in some sense, I call it they are within shouting distance. And one of
Absolutely.
those economies is actually having a recession officially, Germany, and the other one, Japan, is obviously doing a little better, but they have an aging population problem. So
Hmm.
I think, like you rightly said, Neeraj, it's a matter of it's not whether it's going to happen, it is a question of when. And I have I have my bets placed on the fact that it will happen much before the number that you spoke about, the year that you spoke about.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In fact, last 10 years, we have seen lots of transformation, particularly with respect to making India initiatives. That has been one of the driving theme that has, boosted our growth. Now, while on the journey to become $10 trillion economy, what are the themes that you think that going to play out in our journey to $10 trillion?
I think two, three things. I think one is obviously we have this huge service economy which is going to continue to
Mm-hmm.
power our GDP growth to a large extent. Today about 55% of our GDP comes from services, right, as a sector. The second thing, of course, is that this last 8, 10 years, I think what government has been focusing on is a lot on improving the way we manufacture. So if you see the kind of infrastructure that has got created in the last 8, 10 years, and it may not be visible to me in Bombay because Bombay is a city which is practically under construction. All parts of Bombay have been dug up. But you have to just go outside and look at, for example, the Bombay Nagpur Samriddhi Expressway. 600 kilometers is done. Only the last 100 is left. It's as good as any international road that someone needs to drive on. It just cuts the time off by almost 2 days. I mean, in the sense, earlier driving to Nagpur was impossible. Today you can do it. Once you get onto that road, you can get that 600 kilometers done in about 7, 8 hours. And these are small things which we've got very used to. I think the whole jam trinity. I think today, frankly, people are. If I don't carry my wallet and go out today, I'm not worried because as long as my phone is working, internet is working, is fine. I mean, 10 years back, we didn't even have 3G. Today we are in 4G. In fact, most of the population is moving to 5G. We have the highest 5G adoption in the world. 5, 7 years back, we didn't have FASTag. FASTag used to be a very, very niche thing. If you remember going to toll plazas, only 1 or 2 lanes had FASTag. Today it's the reverse. I mean, most lanes are FASTag, and now FASTag works everywhere. So what this does is that it completely improves the efficiency of the economy in a very, very big way. And once the efficiency starts improving, and you have 1.5 billion people, and you have the world's youngest labor population, and you have a thrust on manufacturing, and anyway you're a world beater in services, and anyway your agriculture is also doing well right now. So all this coming together, I think these are like some really. I mean, it's going to be very, very transformation. And I don't. The challenge with transformation is it doesn't happen like this. It takes a period of
Absolutely.
time. And the best way to understand transformation, Neeraj, is to sort of travel one a little bit. Number two, just check with friends, relatives when they come back into the country, what is their experience? I mean, let's leave the negatives aside, the traffic jam, the pollution, the
Yes.
noise, the crowd. That's obviously there. That's always been a given. It was a given even 20 years back, 25 years back when I have friends coming from overseas, they would say the same thing. But you ask them, hey, what are the 5 things that you're seeing different? And you'll be very surprised at what
Mhm.
they're thinking about. Today we have world class airports. I mean, today, for example, I can get down in Bombay Airport or Delhi Airport or Bangalore Airport and clear customs, immigration, and be outside in 40, 45 minutes. I mean, this is not possible in other parts of the world today. Today, I mean, if you go to London Heathrow, for example, there's a very good chance that if you're coming in the holiday season, you could be stuck in the immigration queue for 4 hours.
Mhm.
I know people who have experienced that, and it's not a nice way to do it. So a lot of these things are coming together. So now when the people say what's so great about it, I'm saying today suddenly you'll see a big tourism boost. Today you go to UP, for example. I was there a couple of 3 weeks back in Varanasi. The
Mhm.
kind of stuff that they've done there is fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful for tourism. So these are all small things which are all sort of coming together at one time, and suddenly you'll realize, hey, life is very, very different. It's already different. I mean, today, for example, I don't pay my vegetable vendor by cash anymore. Everything is through GPay now. So it's
Absolutely.
unthinkable 5 years back, right? I mean,
Correct.
today you forget your wallet, it's fine. You forget your mobile phone, you have a serious problem, right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there are so many themes. You talk about urbanization, infrastructure, defense. One of the sector that's it's a proud pride for us all Indians.
Yeah,
Digital
yeah.
revolution, information technology, transportation, logistics, everything. Now, again, coming to manufacturing sector, you know that probably in the past few years we have not done that great. So, how do you think it's going to now play out? That time has come now. China plus one, the whole world's attention is now there. That yes, India have to stand up and deliver. So, how do you see as an
See, I
opportunity?
think manufacturing has always been a bit more complicated, Neeraj, because
Right.
basically for manufacturing you need land, labor, capital.
Exactly.
And if you remember, India had a scarcity of the I mean, never had a scarcity. We had a scarcity of capital, right? We are obviously a capital-starved country. We are, in that sense, a developing country, right? So I think now with all the initiatives that are happening, with a lot of venture capital money, with public issue money coming in, capital is
Mhm.
now slowly issues getting resolved. Now, between land and labor, they are largely state subjects. Now, the big difference that I see in the last 8, 10 years is that states have started competing it for themselves to get manufacturing into their state.
Mhm.
So it's not a given. So when you look at the kind of infrastructure that's got created, let's say for example in UP or in Madhya Pradesh or even in Bihar, it's world class stuff. I mean, apart from Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, these four have always, NCR regions. These have always been the powerhouse of manufacturing from the time of our independence.
Absolutely.
Today these are the people who are now coming in. The second thing, when I club it in with infrastructure development, today it's very easy to transport, for example, iron ore from place A to place B, manufacture and transport finished goods onto the port. That whole process has got much smoother. GST has made that process very smooth. There was a time when you had to get into Bombay, the octroi will take you anywhere between 12 to 24 hours, right? Today, you just trucks just whiz past, right? Today, let's say
Mhm.
people are talking about the Bombay Delhi, the new highway which is coming up. That will maybe cut transportation down by 60-70% in terms of travel time. Today, for a port to sort of complete a circle is taking maybe 4 times faster time than what it took 3, 4 years back. So these are all small things that are aiding
Mhm.
manufacturing. Now, I think the interesting thing about India is that we are also a very consumption driven economy, which is very good from a GDP and a self reliance perspective. We don't need to worry about our stuff being consumed because more than 60-70% of it will get consumed in India itself, which is not the case maybe even with the China or with maybe many parts of Europe, where there's a very big dependence on exports and hence world economy and GDP. And those are the people who are really worried about what's going to happen to interest rates in the US, etc., etc. Right? So I think very
Correct.
interestingly, and there are lots of initiatives which the government is now taking to sort of promote self-sufficiency, import substitution. So defense is a classic case. India is the largest defense importer in the world today, and we import like a huge, almost 14-15% of our national budget goes in defense, and rightly so, because we are in a volatile region, right? We know the problems
Absolutely.
of our region, so we better have the right defense at the right place. So we can't cut costs there, but what can we do? We can at least ensure some import substitution by making things locally here, and that's happening,
Mhm.
right? So you have a
Mhm.
combination of import substitution, you have a combination of a very strong consumption, you have the combination of China, actually the way China reacted during COVID. And again, there is some news story that's coming because this is their season for flu and influenza. So again, there is a worry that they will go back to some COVID protocols. Now, when you're in a global supply chain and large parts of that supply chain start wobbling, then you have a problem because you're not able to develop the finished goods. If you remember
Mhm.
2021, a lot of car companies in India had problems because the chips were not available. We don't make chips in India, we import everything. So, but the rest of the car is available here, but you can't roll that car out because still you have a chip. So I think in some sense that is self-sufficiency. So the same way that we got to self-sufficiency in agriculture, the government wants us to get very self-sufficient in certain key items. So you have import substitution, you have a great industrial movement, you have a great infrastructure story, and you have a world which is now saying, hey, we cannot put all our eggs in one basket. So China is 10 times larger than us in manufacturing. I mean, we are hardly
Mhm.
3% of the world. They are almost 30% of the world, right? So I don't see China fading off. But what I see is maybe incremental investments may start flowing to other parts of the country, of the world. And in that part, I think India has a very good story because we also provide a very strong local market for people to come and invest in.
Absolutely. No, as you said, like land, labor, capital organization, lots of reforms are taking. In fact, my personal experience, land records,
Yeah.
digital, everything, so crystal
So
clear,
Chris.
everything. Few years back, we used to struggle a lot,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I think even when you talk about cost of labor, I think so. When you talk about China plus one, and do you think that because of China a little bit, sidelined, probably not, liked by many of the countries, so we are going to see lots of inflow of funds, both in the FDI for manufacturing sector as well as to market is also connected with it. Do you see that lots of portfolio money is also going to come to India in this 2024, probably after the elections or before the election?
I think it's ongoing, Neeraj, as we speak.
Hmm.
So I think today, one challenge which foreign portfolio investors are facing is that they've largely allocated to the MSCI Emerging Market Index.
अच्छा, वन मोर थिंग, सो सॉरी टू डिस्टर्ब
Sorry.
यू
Yeah,
राघव।
yeah.
एक्चुअली हम लोग ने ना बोलते बोलते भूल ही गया कि हम लोग को थोड़ा हिंदी में भी हम लोग का बहुत
हाँ,
सारे
ठीक है,
ऑडियंस है।
understand. हाँ,
ऑलवेज यू नो नोबडी हैव सेड सो, बट
नहीं, मैं कोशिश करता हूँ। आई थिंक ये
हाँ।
बात आपका बिल्कुल सही है। सो आई थिंक वी आर एड्रेसिंग
एंड
भारत।
ऑल्सो रिक्वेस्ट आवर व्यूअर्स कि अगर आपका मन में कोई भी क्वेश्चंस है ना, बिल्कुल फील फ्री, गो अहेड, टाइप योर क्वेश्चंस एंड विल लव टू डिस्कस। राघव, ओवर टू
हाँ,
यू।
मैं साउथ इंडियन आदमी हूँ, तो मैं कोशिश करूंगा हिंदी में बात करने के लिए सर। बट मैं नीरज साहब के जैसे ठीक से बात नहीं कर पाऊंगा, बट मैं कोशिश करूंगा। आई मीन हर लाइफ में कोशिश करना चाहिए एवरीवेयर, राइट? सो
एब्सोल्युटली।
आई थिंक ये चाइना प्लस वन, सी नीरज, हमने जो बात किया था, आई थिंक ऑलरेडी जो पैसे बाहर से आ रहा है मोस्टली इज कमिंग इन इमर्जिंग मार्केट फंड। इमर्जिंग मार्केट फंड में सबसे दो बड़े एलोकेशन इंडिया और चाइना के होते हैं। तो अभी उधर वहां पे
करेक्ट।
उल्टा हो गया, चाइना हैज डन बैडली, इंडिया हैज डन वेल। तो अगर इन्वेस्टर का रिटर्न तो मोस्टली जीरो ही है। तो अभी क्या हो रहा है, दे आर रिडीमिंग फ्रॉम एमएससीआई बट दे ट्राइंग टू फाइंड वेज ऑफ कमिंग डायरेक्टली इनटू इंडिया। तो आप ये देख रहे हो, एंड अभी इन द लास्ट, स्पेशली लास्ट 1-1.5 साल में, यू आर सीइंग अ लॉट ऑफ हाई क्वालिटी पब्लिक इश्यूज दैट आर कमिंग। अ लॉट ऑफ दीज आर आल्सो टेकन, प्राइवेट इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स को थोड़ा एग्जिट भी मिल रहा है। So that is good because in some sense you have a domestic market, आपके पास private equity को exit मिल रहा है, that means someday he will come back. Number two, global आदमी को आजकल he is not keen on investing in emerging markets क्योंकि US में interest rates बहुत ज़्यादा हो गए थे. So
करेक्ट।
normally इनका inverse relationship हो जाता है. Whenever rates go up in the US, money flows out of emerging markets, goes back to home country. That's typically the relationship. But अभी आप देखोगे last 2-3 Fed meetings से people are talking about rates being maintained. अभी नीचे कब जाएंगे वो पता नहीं है, बट मेंटेनेंस चल रहा है अभी। तो एक टाइम पे इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स का वापस फ्लेवर आएगा, बट इस बार आई थिंक मनी विल कम डायरेक्टली इनटू इंडिया, and
ओके।
initially it will go to large cap stocks and it will go to the prominent stocks, and I think इसमें already if you see, and those are the stocks which have not done too well also last 1-1.5 साल में। आप देखोगे last 5 साल का large cap index is underperforming let's say small cap index, तो there is
राइट।
some room for valuation में भी थोड़ा बहुत है वहाँ पे scope। तो I think if money comes back वो आ जाना चाहिए। Now China plus one, of course, on a import substitution side, as I had said in your last question, Neeraj, I think China को जीरो नहीं कर सकते। तो लोग
बिल्कुल।
बोलते हैं चाइना को हम रिप्लेस करेंगे, वो तो आई डोंट थिंक दैट विल हैपन बिकॉज चाइना, एज आई सेड, इज 10 टाइम्स लार्जर देन अस। ठीक है, बट वी आर ऑन द वे टू गेटिंग देयर। विल इट
करेक्ट।
हैपन immediately? No, it may not. Let us say 25 years later, can it happen? Yes, of course it can.
राइट।
1978 में इंडिया चाइना बराबर थे, मोर और लेस। आप जीडीपी देखोगे, उसके बाद
यस।
30 साल में द वे चाइना ग्रू, इंडिया आल्सो ग्रू, बट चाइना ग्रू मच फास्टर। चाइना grew at 10% GDP CAGR growth for a very very long period of time, और उनके सबसे बड़ा कारण था मैन्युफैक्चरिंग। तो अभी पैसे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में आ रहे हैं, थिंग्स आर गेटिंग बेटर, फ्लेक्सिबल, आई मीन फैक्ट्रीज आर बीइंग सेट अप। आपने बताया था एब्सोल्युटली राइट, इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट, गवर्नमेंट इंटरेस्ट, गवर्नमेंट फोकस, ये सब कर करके और 10-15 साल चलेंगे, आई थिंक यू विल हैव अ सिचुएशन वेयर मे बी वी मे कैच अप, इट इज पॉसिबल।
करेक्ट। नो अगेन, यस, अगेन अभी व्हेनेवर वी सी, जब हम लोग एक थीम प्ले आउट हुआ देखते हैं, and we see a very good movement in that particular theme. We have seen different themes played out in last few years, in the recent past. So there are few questions, उसका साथ मैं क्लैप करके आपको पूछता हूँ। रंजन साहू, प्रोबेबली वो नया इन्वेस्टर है, उन्होंने पूछा है कि म्यूचुअल फंड में इन्वेस्ट करना सेफ है क्या? तो ये भी जरूरत है आंसर देना। एंड देन उसका साथ मिस्टर प्रमोद बी, उन्होंने भी एक क्वेश्चन पूछा है, which are the emerging manufacturing sectors? सो ये दोनों को क्लब करके आप बताइए।
तो रंजन साहब, आपका सवाल बिल्कुल सही है, बिकॉज आई थिंक आप अगर फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर है तो ऑब्वियसली आपका पैसे का सेफ्टी का, आपका या इन्वेस्टमेंट का सेफ्टी का आपका फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन होगा। ये बाद में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग या चाइना या जो भी है वो आपके दिमाग में सेकंड आएगा। पहले तो आप मेरा पैसा सेफ है क्या?
हाँ
हमारी
जी।
इंडस्ट्री रेगुलेटेड बाय सेबी, इट्स अ वेरी सिक्योरिटीज एंड एक्सचेंज बोर्ड ऑफ इंडिया। वी ऑल, उनके एक लाइसेंस लगता है, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ रिस्क मैनेजमेंट, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क दैट इज डन। हमारे तरह तरह के ऑडिट होते हैं। हमारा पैसा एक्चुअली एएमसी खाली पैसे मैनेज करते हैं, आपका पैसा दूसरा ट्रस्टी कंपनी के पास पड़ा रहता है, which is an independent company. तो वी आर ऑपरेटिंग अंडर द ऑस्पिशियस ऑफ रेगुलेटर, ट्रस्टी कंपनी, कस्टडी सेपरेट है हमारा, आपका पैसा तीसरे आदमी के पास पड़ा हुआ है। सो इट इज अ वेरी वेरी ब्यूटीफुल अरेंजमेंट। वी मैनेज द मनी, मनी बिलोंग्स इन द ट्रस्ट, एंड द ट्रस्ट का जो पैसा है सिटिंग इन अ कस्टोडियन अकाउंट। और ये सब तीनों बिल्कुल अनरिलेटेड एंटिटीज है जैसा। तो आपका सेफ्टी का तो मुझे प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, और ये चल रहा है इंडस्ट्री अभी।
हम्म।
जब मैं इंडस्ट्री में आया था तो 1 लाख करोड़ के नीचे था हमारा टोटल इंडस्ट्री सब मिल मिला के, अभी 45 लाख करोड़ के आसपास आ गया है। और उस टाइम पे मेरे ख्याल से टोटल इन्वेस्टर बेस कुछ 25-30 लाख होते थे, अभी 4 करोड़ के आसपास आ गए। वेरी फास्ट ग्रोइंग सेक्टर, हाईली रेगुलेटेड, वेरी वेरी ट्रांसपेरेंट। तो आप हर 1 महीने में हमारा फैक्ट शीट जाके देख सकते हो, हम लोग कहाँ इन्वेस्ट किया है, कौन से स्टॉक में कितने पैसे डाले, लास्ट 1 साल का रिटर्न क्या है, 2 साल का रिटर्न क्या है, उसका रिटर्न इंडेक्स से कैसे कंपेयर होता है, कौन आपका पोर्टफोलियो मैनेज करता है, उसका टोटल फीस क्या होता है, सब कुछ आता है वहाँ पे। Plus, there is a very beautiful mechanism that regulator has set up called scores. So we have a very strong customer relationship management cell. अगर हमसे आपसे कुछ नाराजगी है, you can even go and complain to the regulator. Scores करके एक बहुत बढ़िया प्लेटफॉर्म है, आप उसमें अपना कंप्लेंट डालिए, it will automatically, I think वो वहाँ से मॉनिटर होके हम लोग उसको, we will make sure that आपका any issues get resolved automatically. तो हमारे इंडस्ट्री में बहुत कम कंप्लेंट भी आते हैं. Now coming to the second part, which is that what are the emerging sectors? I think 3-4 बड़े emerging sector है रंजन साहब. I think sorry, ये प्रमोद साहब ने पूछा था मेरे ख्याल से, करेक्ट?
हाँ, प्रमोद एंड अनिल भल्ला जी
प्रमोद
दोनों
और
का।
अनिल, I think 3-4 इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है. एक तो इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूशन इज अ वेरी बिग स्टोरी. तो कुछ भी इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूशन के हिसाब से आप कर लीजिए, डिफेंस, रोबोटिक्स, सोलर सेल, बैटरी कार्स, और ये सब अभी आए नहीं अभी तक. आई मीन इनमें से बहुत सारे कंपनीज आ गए, लिस्टेड कंपनी स्पेस में बहुत कम है. Right? Anything that uses some level of artificial intelligence, anything pharmaceuticals, for example, chemicals, ये सब बहुत सारा import substitution चल रहा है वहाँ पे. Number two is where we have very good research skills. Now, research means you can get it two ways. You can import research, get into collaboration, make it in India, get out. जैसे अभी, for example, Airbus is making their entire transportation planes का हम लोग ने, we have just given a very big order. I think some 100 planes. I think some planes are being imported, but many planes are being manufactured in a new factory sitting in Gujarat. Now, I'm saying, how do you participate in that? Maybe Airbus will not be listed in India, but there may be suppliers of Airbus. There may be ancillary industries of Airbus, which at some stage will go public. हम लोग, we can participate in the wealth creation opportunity वहाँ पे. तो ये 3-4 जो है इमर्जिंग सेक्टर्स आर समथिंग दैट वी कैन थिंक अबाउट, व्हिच आर कमिंग अप टुडे. एंड इसमें बहुत सारे नए थिंग्स आर आल्सो कमिंग अप. सो लाइक वी टॉक्ड अबाउट 5 साल पहले, फॉर एग्जांपल, इन दी आईटी वर्ल्ड आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस जाना ही नहीं चाहता था. टुडे एआई इज अ वेरी बिग थिंग. इट इज जस्ट gone up 5 times and it's getting much more. So there will be new themes also which will keep coming out, Neeraj. So those also we will be closely monitoring and tracking.
Actually, हम लोग अभी we are in a transformation. Our economy is getting transformed. We are transforming, right? So यहाँ पे government जो reforms है, it plays a big role.
Yes.
Even things like Atmanirbhar Bharat, PLI schemes, they have done lots of good to our industries.
Yes.
Now, election का बाद 2024 general election का बाद, do you think another dose of big reform coming, something which is going to be absolutely phenomenally transformative kind of?
I think the good thing which is happening is government is doing a lot of things very very regularly. तो पहले क्या होता था, government would announce something, फिर वो by the time it gets executed it will take time. आजकल उसके ऊपर they have almost become, मतलब उसके ऊपर almost online monitoring होने लग गया है. Various
Correct.
large projects, आपको तो पता ही है, पेपर में आया है recently. Prime Minister's office itself is monitoring some large infrastructure projects. They are monitoring some large manufacturing projects. So it is that level of attention is very high. Number two is if there's anything that needs to be done, अगर PLI scheme को थोड़ा बहुत अगर उनको लगता है कि ये ठीक से चल नहीं रहा है, they are very happy to change it. So there is a constant, how do I call it, review mechanism. There's a constant improve mechanism. So they are not waiting for election result के बाद हम लोग ये करेंगे. वो भी हो सकता है, नीरज जी. I'm not saying no, but I think if you ask me, we have got enough things running already for things to get better. And आपने 3-4 चीज ऑलरेडी आपने बता दिया. आत्मनिर्भर is there, PLI is there, import substitution is there, industrial corridor is there. Now, of course, all these are also running at the same time. इसमें से some are working, some are not working. जो काम नहीं कर रहे ना, they are restructuring it, making some minor changes, doing it and sending it. So I think this process of reform is now practically unstoppable, right? I think that will continue. Manufacturing reform, I think very clearly there is very clearly, I won't call it understanding, but understand they are figuring out that ये बड़ा सा एक हमारे एक opportunity है. Maybe it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. We may have missed that opportunity in the 80s and the 90s because all that we could have technically got it into India, but all that manufacturing went to China. This is
Mm.
now potential chance for us to take some from them. So if we can
Absolutely.
just keep our policies right, and lastly, which is very important, which many people don't talk about very much, Neeraj, is that today our cost of labor is amongst the cheapest in the world. Ultimately,
Absolutely.
that is the most important thing. तो आपके पास your labor, the reason why people manufacture outside their countries because labor cost increase होते रहते हैं. तो 60s में फॉर एग्जांपल यूएस में बहुत सारा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होता था. Then it moved to Japan in Europe and Japan in the 70s and the 80s. And then in
You
the
remember
90s,
made in Japan? Everything used to be
made in
made in
Japan,
Japan at
made
some
in
point.
Germany, आपके पास made in USA, वो सब
Walkman.
Walkman, वो सब 90s में चलता था. Then 90s maybe Japan labor got expensive, went to China. Abhi the problem in China is ulta because they don't have they have a declining population because of the
Right.
one child policy. तो वहाँ पे automatically labor बढ़ गया क्योंकि मेरे पास इतने ही आदमी है करने के लिए. Now that guy can work in a factory, Neeraj ji, or he can work in an office. Right? Office में obviously ज़्यादा पैसे मिलते हैं, so there is the cost of labor has gone up. So that part of the world is coming to us. Now, interestingly, even if I compare other emerging markets, we are quite cheap.
Absolutely.
They're quite
In
cheap.
fact,
And
hmm,
that will take some time for us to become expensive because we have a very large population of people
mhm,
who are reaching working age. Like I said, almost 50% plus of our population is in the working age. And we are now almost getting 15 to 20 million people coming into the workforce every year. So यहाँ पे ओवर सप्लाई नहीं, यहाँ पे ओवर सप्लाई है लेबर. तो अगर आप यहाँ पे ओवर सप्लाई होगा तो इसका कॉस्ट ऑब्वियसली विल ऑलवेज बी एट अ रीजनेबल लेवल कंपेयर टू एनीबडी एल्स इन द वर्ल्ड. जहाँ पे सप्लाई
mhm.
घटता है दैट इज व्हेन द कॉस्टिंग गोस अप. दैट्स अ नॉर्मल रूल.
Absolutely. In fact, this is kind of a once in a lifetime kind of an opportunity for any country. Like you said, Japan, it came in 1980s, 90s, after that China, and I think this is probably India's time now. So, काफी
आई होप
लोगों
सो.
ने
आई होप सो, आई प्रे सो. आई थिंक दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट. अभी तक तो
yes,
दिख रहा है हम लोग लास्ट 3-4 साल से नीरज जी इज एब्सोल्युटली यू आर इन द राइट, वी आर इन द राइट डायरेक्शन.
करेक्ट. काफी सारे लोगों ने यहाँ पे एक्चुअली कमेंट बॉक्स में लिखे भी हैं कि किसी ने कि इन्वेस्ट कैसे करना है. जैसे राघव ने कहा है कि ओपन एन अकाउंट, स्टार्ट इन्वेस्टिंग इन ए म्यूचुअल फंड. अगर आपको बिल्कुल ही समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि आप जस्ट निफ्टी 50 खरीदो, इन्वेस्ट तो करना ही चाहिए. और काफी सारे लोगों ने कहे कि डेली लॉस हो रहा है ट्रेडिंग करने के लिए. सी, दिस इज योर चॉइस. हाउ डू यू वांट टू क्रिएट योर वेल्थ? सो दिस इज एन अपॉर्चुनिटी, डोंट मिस दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी. तो यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन है मिस्टर तनवार. As per my understanding, almost 19,000 crores every month coming to the market in terms of SIP. Due to this, market is growing with unfair valuation. Your view, please.
नो मिस्टर तनवार, एक तो 19,000 नहीं है. होपफुली आपका व्यू जल्दी हो जाएगा. आई थिंक लास्ट मंथ वाज अबाउट 16,000.
Mhm.
बट वो तो म्यूचुअल फंड में आ रहा है. एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स यू हैव एनपीएस, यू हैव ईपीएफओ, हमारा लेबर का पैसा, नीरज योर मनी एंड माय मनी व्हिच इज गोइंग इनटू प्रोविडेंट फंड. जैसे मेरे प्रोविडेंट फंड
Right.
के पैसे 100 रुपए में से 10 से 15 रुपए ऑटोमेटिकली इज गोइंग इनटू इक्विटीज, राइट, थैंक्स टू ईपीएफओ, राइट. Then of course you have insurance companies, you have pension fund schemes. So सब मिल मिला के तो obviously that number will be somewhere close to it. I think on valuation basis we are not very expensive, sir. We are not cheap, we are not expensive. हम लोग बीच में.
We are fairly valued at this.
And ये क्या होता है? I think how do you determine? Don't determine expensive valuation just by looking at the index. अगर आपको लगता है इंडेक्स 21,000 है, नहीं है, but आपके नीचे कंपनीज का आप अर्निंग्स देखोगे. So I think the important thing is to see the price to earnings of the market. एक प्राइस आपने देख लिया ऊपर का 21,000 या 70,000. So people have made up their mind saying 70,000 is very high because maybe the same investor has seen market at 20,000. तो उनको लगता है यार साढ़े तीन गुना मार्केट बढ़ गया है. So it's expensive. But what was the profit of the companies below that? If you see, that is also grown by 3, 4, 5 times. अभी बहुत सिंपल, आप किसी भी पब्लिक लिमिटेड कंपनी का बैलेंस शीट ले लो और आप 5 साल पहले का उनका प्रॉफिट ले लो और अभी का ले लो प्रॉफिट, आपको समझ में आएगा व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से, राइट. इफ द
Correct.
प्रॉफिट एंड ग्रोथ इज आल्सो बीन देयर. So please see the price to earnings ratio. It is a good ratio. I mean, it is one of the many ratios that are used to look at valuation. It is a good ratio. PE ratio for the market. FY24 नहीं देखते, FY25 देखते हैं क्योंकि 24 हो गया है. There's an estimated earning that is there. Based on that, market is not expensive. हाँ, having said that, it's not cheap also. Neeraj. So
Correct.
the key thing is when the market is not very cheap, not very or not expensive. I think somewhere like in my life, I think I prefer to trust my money with professional fund managers जो mutual fund देते हैं मुझे at a very reasonable cost and very easy to do. Right? So why should I take the trouble? I will rather spend my time talking to all of you, and I will get maybe my viewer, my fund managers or the fund managers in the industry to do this. So that is also one way of doing it. So I think that's a better way to do it, my view personally, because हर चीज में एक expert होना चाहिए जिसका
बिल्कुल.
एक आदमी का काम है जो पूरा दिन सवेरे शाम यही करता रहता है. It is better to give it to him with a and having an institutional back fund house means that आपके पैसे प्रोसेस के साथ इन्वेस्ट होते हैं. So leave it to the experts to decide whether it is cheap, market expensive, कौन सा कंपनी में डालना चाहिए, कौन सा सेक्टर में डालना चाहिए. Let them decide. You enjoy the journey. That's all.
Absolutely. Actually, आपने जो कहा है अभी, it's very important. Many people realize it काफी late in their investment journey. So it's a good thing that you start on a right footing, right at the beginning of your journey. जितना जल्दी ये बात हम लोग को समझ में आएंगे, इतना ही अच्छा
Yes.
है.
Absolutely.
Yes. तो Raghav, one more thing. अभी देखिए Axis अभी it's a right time probably. Axis Mutual Fund is launching manufacturing एक manufacturing NFO. तो यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन है सुनील कुमार पारचुरी. ओके. हाय राघव, हाउ इज एक्सिस म्यूचुअल फंड इन्वेस्टमेंट स्ट्रैटेजी इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम योर कॉम्पिटिटर्स? एंड उनका एक क्वेश्चन है कि वेयर योर इन्वेस्टमेंट फिलोसफी और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फंड एनएफओ, उसका फिलोसफी एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट स्ट्रैटेजी, हाउ इट इज डिफरेंट?
I don't want to get into competitor because सबके अपने advantages या disadvantages होते हैं. So let's talk about Axis India Manufacturing. Sunil ji, I hope that's okay. I think we are focusing on three things. I think one is what we call premiumization of consumption. इसमें for example, just an example of that is, sir, 5 साल पहले the most searched item for smartphones used to be phones under 10,000 rupees. Last 1 साल में that category has seen a 20% fall in its sales. Whereas premium smartphones, which we call 35,000 rupees and ऊपर, उनका 50% बढ़ गया. What this means is as people are getting slightly more wealthier, feeling good, जैसे आपने बताया in the beginning, Neeraj ji, that what is the mood in the market. I think people are stepping up in terms of their quality of consumption. And those are some of the companies that we are going to try to capture. Right? That could be in any format. That could be also. Number two is, of course, we are also looking at pure manufacturing, which is typically new factories, R&D based. And here there are a plethora of companies. Right? And the third thing, of course, is anything which is some substitution. So anything which is like a PLI or anything which is like I talked about, import substitution. These are all things that can come in here. So the beauty of this theme is that I'm not really constrained. We are not constrained to invest in one particular sector. The index itself is comprised of about 11 sectors, almost 60 plus industries. So there is enough variety and depth to buy. And that is what we will try and make out of India, Axis India Manufacturing Fund. So I think there's a lot of depth. I think like we talked for the last 25 minutes, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We are in a transformation stage, Neeraj ji, jaise aapne exactly bataya. There are a lot of new industries also coming up. And this is a reasonably wide theme. I think it's an interesting theme to launch at this point of time. Yes.
Okay. I think Anil Vallaji ka question है valuation ka regarding the market valuation. I think we have already discussed, Anil ji. There's a Mr. Shankar, Tirupur Shankar. How will the mutual fund fare in the future? Is there a chance of change of government in 2024? Will there be any fall or boom in the share market?
Shankar ji, ये आपका बिल्कुल fantastic question है because 20% of the questions I get are largely related to that ये government is a big दिमाग में है ना, every 5 years we go through this phase, right? That is the beauty of our country, that every 5 years a common citizen like you and me has the chance to determine who our leaders will be. So ये actually ये ताली बजाने वाला system है, right? And in the past, we have demonstrated that despite how strong a government is, they can be ejected, right? And there are enough instances on that. But आपको एक statistic देना चाहता हूँ, Mr. Shankar ji, that 2006 to 2010 was the period where actually manufacturing had the best growth in India in the last 15-20 years. It almost grew by 30%, more than 30%. That was also the phase where our GDP was very good. It was almost 8.3, 8.4% plus. right? उसके बाद we have never had that kind of GDP number. We have been good, but not 8.5 तक एक आध बार कभी long time नहीं आया. Now, if you remember 2006 to 2010, you had a minority Congress government. It was Congress
Mm-hmm.
government
Mm-hmm.
supported by Communist Party of India. The first election, 2004 to 2009. So, वो 3 साल में actually Congress was in support from outside from Communist Party, but you had the best growth. तो मैं कहना क्या चाहता हूँ कि सर we are in a system today where and calling an election is very difficult. I think the Indian elect is a very fragmented. It's a large country, sir. तो एक and there are some common issues which I think Indian voter has got now some handle on. तो एक तो है security, एक तो है development, एक तो है infrastructure, एक है obviously employment, right? And of course, then there are a whole lot of other things. It varies from region to region, state to state, district to district. So difficult to sit in Bombay, central Bombay, and say ये होने वाला है. But I think the point I'm trying to make is irrespective of who comes in, I think this theme will continue to power ahead because ultimately this is like Neeraj said, this is a very, very big opportunity. I think people are looking for continuity in policy. So policy continue होगा. So maybe you may have a change of branding, but
Irrespective of government.
काम तो वही होगा और कुछ नहीं होगा. So
Absolutely.
I'm not very stressed about it.
I think वो आपने जो 2004 में जब 17th of May, I still remember the day the result came. Only that is the day that market reacted. After that,
Absolutely.
it's one way move and
Absolutely.
lowest point. So
Absolutely.
अभी तो market काफी mature हो चुका है. तो
Absolutely.
उस तरीके का reactions भी और again we don't need to worry too much about it.
Yes.
Now this is a very interesting thing again.
But I must tell you that इस पे बहुत सारा चर्चा होगा because an election is a big event in India. You know, almost 500 million people, 600 million people voting. वो एक देश में I think in the world it is like a big event, right? And we do it very, very well. I mean, to be fair to all our people who contribute to it, whether it's the election commission, whether it's all the government officers who work very hard for it, I think it's a fabulously well conducted process. And more importantly, nobody is disputing it. In many other parts of the world, बहुत सारे riots happen, people dispute, they don't give
Look
up
at
power.
US.
बहुत सारा तमाशा होता है. I think in India, that way the result is respected, even if the ruling party gets ejected also, it's a very, very smooth handover. I think we must be grateful to God for this process. Normally election होते हैं वही बड़ी बात है. Election होने के बाद जो result होता है is respected by everybody, both winners and losers, and the power goes transferred very well. So I think it's a great story. I think international people now, Neeraj ji, are actually recognizing this as a very, very powerful thing in India. And
Absolutely.
that, to my mind, will also have more money flow coming.
Because
investors like to invest in a democracy. Democracy का मतलब क्या है? That there is a voice to a common man. So I think that's a blessing we have. We can completely curse saying, sir, court cases take 5 years, 10 years. वो सब ठीक है. But I'm telling you, at least you have a story here where you can do it. I think we should be grateful.
Absolutely. Now again, coming to your theme of manufacturing sector. Now it's a thematic investment. तो एक कोई भी एक न्यू इन्वेस्टर हो, एक्सपीरियंस इन्वेस्टर्स हो, एक तो है उनका पोर्टफोलियो में कितना वेटेज होना चाहिए इन दिस पर्टिकुलर थीम, और शुड आई बी इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मी टू बी ए पार्ट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर थीम, क्योंकि अगेन थीमेटिक इन्वेस्टिंग इज नॉट दो सो सिंपल, इट्स अ लिटिल बिट ट्रिकी देन द नॉर्मल इन्वेस्टिंग. सो कितना पार्ट मेरा होना चाहिए, व्हाट इज द बेस्ट अप्रोच, एसआईपी, लमसम कैसे करना चाहिए, और कितना टाइम के लिए मुझे होल्ड करना चाहिए?
Because first we'll start. My view fundamentally is that manufacturing is a sector where you have बहुत सारे गधे घोड़े होते हैं. See, so you need someone with a bit of a quality mindset to look at manufacturing. So if you get into the wrong company in a manufacturing, the sector may be doing very well, but if you get into a company where the promoter is a bit of a fraud, or there is some misrepresentation of financial results, or there are a lot of other things which have happened in the past in this sector, there is a very serious chance that you will have a permanent diminution of capital. Right? And we have seen this in the past. 2007 to 2004 to 2008, very big theme was their infrastructure funds. They all did very well, but over a period of time, the quality of those companies turned out to be quite poor. So investors lost a lot of money. So I think it's important that you invest, and that is where I think Axis, with its philosophy of quality and growth, hopefully will give a good experience
Mhm.
over the future. Now, number two, I think this is not a fund for the first time investor. I think this, like you rightly said, Neeraj, is something which is a little more risky because there are many sectors I will not be investing. So for a first time investor, ideally someone should get into a large cap fund or a flexi cap fund. जहाँ पे I think the risk levels are slightly lower compared to say something like this. Number three, I think ideally you should have a minimum 5 year horizon for this because इस पे volatility होता रहेगा. See, I think this as a sector is unlike consumption will see periods of boom bust. There will be 2-3 quarters where the companies will do very well,
Mhm.
1 or 2 quarters they may not do well, but eventually if the company is good, they'll catch up again. So the price will go up and down, but hence it is important for you to have a 5 year view. Uh, Plus at least a 5 year view. I am a
5 year
personal
plus.
fan, sir. I am a personal fan of SIP more as a discipline tool. I think मेरे को लगता है जो मुझे जो invest करने I put it through SIPs because I know then in the beginning of the month if I have X amount to invest, वो invest हो गया. I think the mistake I made in my personal journey in the initial parts of my career was I waited for money to be left over and then invest that money. And today in today's world where there's so many, thousands of advertisements and Swiggy and Zomato and ye and wo, normally most people have very little money in the end of the month to invest. So I think it's better if you get that money out in the beginning itself. And वो एक disciplined तरीके से निकल जाते हैं. Then you're not really worried about whether market is high, low. As long as you're giving it to a good quality fund house, आपको वो प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं आएगा आपको वहाँ पे. सो आई थिंक both lump sum and this thing is fine, but the important thing, Neeraj, like you rightly said, is you have to participate. Now, how much to participate is a very, very individual question. I can't say 2%, 5%, 10%, 20%. It is going to be a bit more volatile. It is going to be a bit riskier than, let us say, a normal flexi cap fund. So based on that, please put the appropriate amount of money.
Correct.
Right? I think it's individual. It also depends आप कितने risk ले
Yes.
सकते हो, आपका कितना पैसा समय के लिए. All those things also will play an important role when you take that decision. But you must not miss the chance is my request because this, like you rightly said, Neeraj, is a very, very good, strong opportunity.
Absolutely. Once in a lifetime for country like India, for our country. Okay. Again, a student, there's a student, he asked the question, but again, I will take the question at the end because it's a very important question.
Okay.
Again, Anil Bhalla ji ne pucha ki what is the return that we can expect in next 5 years? I don't know whether you'll be able to,
I
you'd
can't
like
see.
to answer.
Anil ji, it is effectively normally there is something called nominal GDP, which is nothing but your growth rate plus your inflation. And typically, अच्छे company, hopefully high quality companies will be able to beat that. So if you
Mhm.
have a view that inflation growth will be say 8% or आपका inflation 4-5% है, and if you're in a good set of hands, they will be able to do that. So that's the thing. But it's also dependent on the GDP growth, the inflation. ये सब 4-5 variable आ जाते हैं वहाँ पे.
Mhm.
So return expectation is difficult, but आप अभी देखोगे if you look at and this is the perennial problem I've had because you can never predict the future very easily in the stock market. How many ever charts you see, how many ever annual reports you read, the market is the market, right? So you cannot ever say 20 years later, but the market is very correlated to the economy. तो
Mhm.
आपका अगर लगता है कि economy will do well in the next 10, 15, 20 years, so हमको लगता है sitting here when we look at various studies, we look at the kind of work that is happening in both central and state governments, and you see the kind of infrastructure, and you see that India will become a top 3 worldwide economy in the next 5-7 years. All those projections are there. You see a lot of technological differences happening,
Mhm.
JM plus GST plus so many things have happened, right? I can write a whole. I think Neeraj, you and I can do a separate show on all the things that have happened in the last 5-6 years. अगर आपको लगता है ये
Absolutely.
सब चलेगा और इसके कारण इकोनॉमी और भी बढ़ेगा, आई थिंक देन इट इज वेरी नेचुरल दैट इक्विटी मार्केट अनिल जी तो ठीक ही करेगा फिर वहाँ
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल वो बात चिंता मत कीजिए अनिल जी. सो लेट्स. अच्छा, एक सुनील कुमार पाचुरी उन्होंने कहा आई वाज गोइंग थ्रू फ्यू ऑफ NF4 डॉक्यूमेंट्स एंड रियलाइज दैट दे आर मोर प्रोडक्ट ओरिएंटेड which leads to duplication of underlying stocks to a large extent. How can you come up with an unique product?
Access India manufacturing is unique because if you see, for example, the exposure to say chemicals in the index, इसमें एक
Mhm.
मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडेक्स होता है, निफ्टी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडेक्स होता है. अगर आप उसका केमिकल्स का एक्सपोजर देखोगे एंड यू लुक एट निफ्टी 50, द
Mhm.
डिफरेंस इज वेरी वेरी हाई. I think
Mhm.
in the index in Nifty in manufacturing index it's almost 10%. In the Nifty 50 it's about 0.5%. So
Mhm.
that is one way to ensure differentiation, and that is one reason why we have come out with this separate theme. In fact, a viewer recently asked me in another show that why aren't you doing the same thing in your flexi cap fund? And my answer was that this is a slightly thematic fund. So this will have a very different portfolio compared to what we run in our flexi cap fund, which is a mix of various things, consumption, manufacturing, सब कुछ आ
Mhm.
जाता है वहाँ पे. This is a dedicated manufacturing story. So that is one way where you can come up with a unique fund. I hope, Sunil ji, I have answered your question satisfactorily.
Yes. Okay. Now we'll take the last question, and probably you can sum up. Uh, okay, Mr. Dhalwani, Jashan Dhalwani, for a
Hmm.
beginner, how to choose the SIP, and what about annual return? Okay, how to choose the right SIP? That's one question. And there's another question from a student, and he asked, please suggest me trading better than SIP. So, yeah, बहुत important है.
Okay, I'll take the second question first because I have never see I never been a trader, unfortunately, and I don't know your name, so I'll just call you Mr. Student, right? I have never done trading, so I am not, so I have no expertise to comment on that. The only
Mhm.
question, only data point that I like to leave you with is that some of the richest people in the world didn't get there by being traders, right? And I think if you look at, we had a very recent, about 2 3 weeks back, one of the most respected investors in the world, Charlie Munger, who's actually Warren Buffett's partner, passed away at the age of 99. He was not a trader, right? So if you look at some of the people who have really created wealth for themselves and their investors, they are not people who get up in the morning and start trading. For them, price is one of the important factors. Trading is a liquidity tool. It's not a, मतलब उनको कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है अगर प्राइस ऊपर नीचे जाएगा तो, as long as they've invested in the right company and they have their investment horizon spread out and they've got a reasonably large portfolio of stocks which helps you not worry about one or two stocks taking there. So as a student, I know it's very sexy to trade. मजा आता है. I mean, and you have some fantastic. Paytm, for example, has a beautiful platform where it's very easy to do compared to when I was a student, where you had to fill up dozens of forms and there was a very good chance of a bad trade happening. Ajkal, it's fantastic. We are possibly one of the few countries in the world which have a T+1 settlement today. तो पैसे का भी फटाफट आ जाते हैं आपके पास. You have a very good F&O market, very efficient. वहाँ पे भी आ जाता है. So all those things are there. It just remember it's a full-time job. If you're not doing it and you're not studying it properly and you don't have a model and you don't have the emotional intelligence, be careful. If you're doing it for fun, that's a different story. I mean, it's like going to the race course and having fun on a Sunday afternoon. But if you're a real serious trader and you're putting serious money, then you have to study it properly. And
Correct.
a lot of things are not taught in textbooks; they come through experience. So please be aware of that.
Yes.
Second question is which one, sir? The one.
Mr. Jashan Dhalwani, his
Huh.
question is for a beginner, how to choose the SIPs and what about annual return?
See, I think SIPs clearly, I think one should look at funds which have a 5 year plus track record. Ideally, more importantly, see how they've handled the downside more than the upside. I think that's something I look at personally. That how does a fund behave when the markets are going down? See, when things are going up, sometimes you just catch the tide and you go up along with that, right?
Mhm.
But when the markets are going down, that's where the skill levels of a fund manager are very, very sorely tested. ये जो हम लोग बोलते हैं risk management, diversification, all that really comes into effect when markets are going up. So I would look at that. Obviously, institutional backed process dominated funds. I think the mutual fund industry is a great place to put money.
Mhm.
I think if you're a beginner, my advice is go between large and mid cap funds if you have a long horizon. If you are a risk averse investor, want to get into equity, maybe a large cap fund or an index fund is a good place. Large cap index fund is a good place to start. If you have a longer term horizon, then of course mid cap, small cap
Mhm.
funds are always very, very good. So it also depends on what is your time horizon, what is your risk tolerance. We did a
Mhm.
very interesting campaign actually, Neeraj, which is called Socha
Mhm.
Samjha Risk, which is essentially we looked at it saying that you have to look at your investments by doing a risk profiler, which will
Mhm.
tell you by answering a set of questions which can come through you or any other partner, or you can go through any website and look at it. It will tell you what is your level of risk. वो हिसाब से there is something called a riskometer in every mutual fund scheme, and marry that
Mhm.
riskometer results with your results, and that is what you should do. Once you get these two right, just enjoy the journey, because then you're not really worried about मैं कितना कहाँ डालूं किधर डालूं, right? So
Absolutely.
पहले अपना risk profiler कर दीजिए, find out how much risk you can take based on the results of that risk profiler, then you take a decision as to what you want to invest in. We go
Wonderful.
backwards. हम लोग पीछे जाते हैं.
I
I'm
think
saying उल्टा करते हैं.
Raghav, I think we had a very wonderful, all topics included. Not necessarily we discuss about, India 10 trillion and manufacturing sector. We spoke about variety of issues today.
Yes, Neeraj.
I think it's pretty insightful for many participants who are first timers, who are new students and all. So again, while concluding your closing statement.
I think India is on the cusp of something big. We are already achieved it.
Mhm,
I think markets are at new highs. Don't worry about it. As long as the underlying economy, Neeraj, is doing well, don't worry about index headlines. Those are
mhm,
newspaper reports, those are TV reports. It's their job to flash both good and bad, right? And getting to 21,000 or getting to 70,000 or whatever number will make an
mhm,
impact on the thing. Please be aware that if you're able to focus on your personal risk, your ability to invest money, please put as much money as you can. If you are a trader, please be a good trader, please study it. Trading is a very, very in-depth subject. It takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do that. So just don't do it because your neighbor is doing it and he made a few thousand rupees. आप मत करो. This uninformed trading is very injurious to health. Please be an
financial health.
investor. Please be an investor. Please be an investor. I'm repeating again. I think equity markets will are reflective of the economy. अगर आपको लगता है India as an economy is going to do well over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, I think that's the place to put it. So, lastly, my last point, Neeraj, is please keep your asset allocation under control. Most investors go this way or that way. So in
Mm,
bad times, they completely cut off equity and go into something else. In good times, they completely cut off everything else and go towards it. And I've seen that too much. दोनों side पे देखा है. So when real estate is doing well, everybody is buying one house, two house, three house, and then now when it does badly, सब जो भी है घर पे loss पे बेच के then they go into something else. So have a mix of everything, including bank deposits, including residential house, including stocks, including mutual funds. Within mutual funds, have various types of mutual funds. Don't only put money only into small cap because small cap has done very well last 5 years. That's where your risk profile or your risk tolerance will help you. So a good asset allocation approach will help you enjoy life. And please don't get worried about index levels. I think a level hote rahenge. I've been seeing Sensex since the time it was 1,000 points. So it's not something, and I'm not that old. So it's not something I've seen it go
Your
up 50, 60 times, right? So it's not something. Hopefully, I'll see it grow further over the period of time. So
Absolutely. So, Raghav, it is wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. And to all our participants and our viewers, thank you so much, guys. I hope we could do justice to your time that you have invested with us today.
thank
And
you.
looking forward to see you all again. And Raghav, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Neeraj. Dhanyawad, everybody. Thank you for taking time off on a Monday evening. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.